大衛
今日我哋第三粒巨星終於降臨啦，
降臨啦，
係啦，
有幾句咧？
就係咧佢咧係或者大家都唔識，之前如果未聽我哋呢個訪問之前，大家都可能唔知道佢係邊個，但係希望大家今日聽完我哋呢個訪問之後，可以對佢有更深嘅印象。咁咧佢哋就係Pierre Allard 先生，Bonjour Mr. Pierre Allard.
Bonjour.
So welcome to our studio, and I'm very glad that I can do an interview with you.
Thank you, David.
First of all, can you introduce yourself a little bit more? Because I don't think that the Chinese community knows about you.
Right, okay. In a nutshell, I'm 77 years old. I'm an old man. I've been a lawyer for 44 years. I'm retired. I'm using my spare time now trying to write. I'm writing books, I'm writing blogs, and I've got the 4 blogs in Montreal, in French Montreal, which I've got most people listening or reading them. So in the French part of the community, what I write is read by a significant amount of people. That's what I'm doing with my spare time.
Good. Now you're writing for the election?
Well, in part, obviously I'm interested in politics. So it's election time. I'm writing about elections, but I've been writing about many, many other things. I've got about 2,000 articles in my blogs and in my books and everything. So I'm very interested in many subjects. Politics is one of them.
Okay. And you are one of the independent?
Well, yes. This is part. It is the illustration of something which I've been preaching for a while. I always said that one of the great failures of our democracy was that we had to vote with just one vote, both for the government, for the governance, and for representativity. So we have to elect in one vote the person who's going to represent the citizens and the party which we believe is fit to run the country, which, to my opinion, is nonsensical. Because the reason we need a representative is to check the government. In other words, if I elect somebody as a deputy, as a representative in the area of Westmount St. Louis, for example, what we expect of him is not to be subservient to the government, but we want him to check what the government is doing and try to express the will of the people of this circumscription of the area. And this is what I propose. So I say we should all have independent deputy. We should all be independents. Actually, to be affiliated to a political party should be an obstruction, an obstacle to being a deputy. It shouldn't be allowed. In this case, we cannot do that because the law is not made that way. But I can at least give the people of Westmount one chance of voting for somebody independent who will actually try to translate what they want into words for the government of Quebec.
So you mean people should vote for that person and not for that political party?
Well, they should do both. In other words, we should have 2 votes. The same way they do in the United States. You vote for the president, which is the executive, and you vote for a congressman, which is your legislator, the one you're supposed to trust, right or wrong. So in this case here in Canada, we have, if you vote for the Liberal Party, bingo, you've got the deputy, which is representing the Liberal Party. Not representing you, representing the Liberal Party.
Oh.
I see. If you are voting for the pickist député, well, you are voting for Pauline Marois. Even if the man who is representing the pickist party or the Parti Québécois is absolutely fantastic, when you end up, you're still voting for Pauline Marois. So it should be 2 different things. I should say, I believe, for example, that Mrs. Marois or Mr. Charest, or none of those, of course, is fit to lead the country. That should be one decision. And then I should say, in my community here, in this area, this is an honest man, which I've known for 40 years or 50 years, and I believe that he should represent me and talk in my name to the government of Quebec, giving me the chance to express my opinion. Right now, when you vote for a party, you're done for 4 years. This is it. You've decided nobody is going to consult you anymore. But if you have an independent representing this circumscription, then every time there's a vote coming up, we can have a simple process. I can write in my blogs what it's all about, so I can inform my community of what's going on. Those are the options. What do you think about it? I can listen to their comments, to their remarks. And then on the basis of that, I'm going to create a committee of people representing the various socioeconomic, ethnic groups, for businessmen, Italians, Chinese, people who are working in finance, all those people should have representative in a kind of advisory committee. And I'm going to consult those people and ask them, what do you feel? How do you interpret what the people are telling me in my blogs? Are they for or against this idea? What should I say? I will, with them, try to concord a sort of answer, and this is the answer I'm going to bring to the government of Quebec.
Do you think it's possible to do it in Montreal or in Canada?
Oh, yes.
Your idea?
Oh, yes. Actually, I've been writing about that for years. And at a certain point, a couple of years ago, I was at the government of Quebec. There was a commission on representative, and I've been invited to make a kind of speech, that thing. And I've been widely applauded by everybody else. I mean, it was a standing ovation. Everybody agrees with that, except that when you try to do it, there are so many vested interests against this idea that nobody will contradict me. They just don't speak about it. In other words, the idea of démocratie contractuelle, which means giving government as a contract to the people. Huh? You say, if you want a prime minister, I'm giving you a contract, obey your contract, do what you're supposed to do, I'm going to get rid of you, do what you're supposed to do. This idea goes against so many things, so many interests in the country. Nobody will try to object to it because it won't work. The people are for this idea. We had a sondage made, and 73% of the population agree with that. But nobody wants to do that.
No, it's also about money as well, right? Because when you do election, it costs a lot. Like, Liberal, they have a bus.
Yes.
Right? You as an independent.
Yes.
And your idea, when I heard about that, is it sounds like perfect.
Yes.
Okay, maybe my political education is not that good, but it sounds like perfect.
Yes.
However, when money involved, I don't think it works. You understand what I mean, right?
No, because what I can maybe I can interpret what you say. If you say it doesn't cost money to do that, in other words, it's not difficult to have the system established. It would be very, very cheap. Actually, it's not so different from what they have in the United States. You vote for Congress, you vote for the president. There's no problem there. The problem is that our society is built in such a way that the people who have powers, mostly bankers, let's face it, those people have already their interests organized with politicians. All this is a closed net. They don't want any person to interfere with that. If you get independent candidates who can start saying yes to something and no to something, it's very complex for them. At this time, if you want to push something in Canada, you have to convince 2 or 3 persons, no more. If somebody gets the yes from Charest, and the yes from Marois, and the yes from 2 or 3 more persons, and mostly if he gets the okay from Mr. Desmarais and power comparison, well, that's it. The democracy is just a sham. I mean, it doesn't work. It's just for fun. So, but if you suppose you would have independent candidates starting to argue about the pro and cons of every measure, this is where you could get real surprises, and this is not what the people want. So this idea about démocratie contractuelle is not being denounced, it's not being contradicted, it's being totally ignored. And it's been so for years and years.
When you compare this with the United States is actually a capitalism country, but Canada, he claims that he is socialism.
Oh, no. Well, you see, when you're really smart, you pretend to be something else than you are.
Are you talking about China?
No, didn't cross my mind. So, in this case, you see, in Canada, obviously, we are a strongly capitalist-oriented country. Our banks are the best banks in the world. I mean, no other country in the world has a banking system that compares with Canada. They control everything. I mean, we didn't have a crisis. Americans' banks were getting bankrupt by the scores. In Canada, we didn't move. We control the whole situation. So it's actually it's probably the most perfect capitalistic system in the world. We have it in Canada. Aren't we happy? But the problem is that we pretend to be socialists because we do have some people-oriented measures which are a little bit better than the United States. For us, when we say we are going to have a health system, it doesn't mean that we are going to force people to buy insurance like they do.
Like Obama.
When they say that we are going to get a free system of health in the United States, it means we are going to force you to buy insurance. If you do that in Canada, you'll get a riot. So in this case, we can say that we are a little bit more evolved politically, and we can understand that politics is something a little bit more than just being a Democrat or a Republican. So we're a little bit more evolved than that. And but except for that, the real system in its day-to-day operations is definitely a capitalistic system. There's just no way out of it.
Okay, so I think we need to take a rest. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
it's
very interesting.
Completely different than
from other interviews.
And I think I understand why you're independent.
Okay,
let's take a break.
Take a break,
Sure.
and we'll ask more question. 好啦，我哋而家翻嚟我哋第二節嘅呢個訪問啊，同 Monsieur Pierre 啦，Allard。Okay, let's go. Let's keep continue. The first question that I need to ask you is the biggest question that the most of the Chinese community care about. Is referendum.
Okay.
Are
you against or agree with the referendum?
The idea of separation, basically.
Okay, because if you're talking about the referendum, I believe it's just a loss of time, but so much money will be spent on it that it will make the economy work a little bit. But it's a sham. It doesn't mean anything. The idea of independence is an idea which died a sudden death about 40 years ago. In other words, when it was taught in the 1950s, it was a reasonable idea because the whole world was trying to get more and more independent, and every community, over 500, wanted to be an independent country. That was the zeitgeist of that period. But after 1970, it turned to be completely ridiculous. And today, we are in a world where independence doesn't have any meaning anymore. So it's not being for or against the independence of Quebec. It's the notion of independence that doesn't make sense. At this precise moment in Europe, 72% of the laws for Frenchmen are made by the European community in Brussels, which means that the percentage of their laws that Frenchmen can actually do by themselves is smaller than the percentage of laws that we make in Quebec for Quebecers. But, of course, Quebecers do not know that, and they are not going to be told that, because there is a kind of business going on trying to promote a referendum, being for a referendum, against a referendum. And while we're talking about referendum or independence, we're not talking about anything else. But the idea is that this idea is dead. It's not serious. It's obsolete. It doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous. It's being used for political purpose, trying to promote interest and this and this and this, in everything except reality. So it's just like the muleta. You know, the matador goes and calls the beef, the bull in this direction, this. Anything except me. Shoot left, shoot right, doesn't matter. Don't aim at me. A referendum is a way to try to have people think about something else. We're not talking about education. We're not talking about health. We're not talking about justice, which is terrible in Quebec. We're talking about referendum. And who cares? It doesn't mean a thing. There's nothing to be gained. Whatever the result of a referendum, it's not going to be either good or bad for Canadians. It's probably going to be a loss of time and money, and it's going to divert attention from very serious matters. So I'm against it, dead set against it.
Okay, good. You just talk about students, like education. What do you think about student protest?
Well, I believe the student protest as a protest is a very good thing because it brought attention to a certain amount of negligence in society. It brought attention to the corruption of the Charest government. Everything about the student protest was a sign of vitality. It was a kind of 1968. If you were not born in 68, but China,
no, not yet.
China had something in 1968, as you remember.
Yeah.
So there was something. So the fact that you throw people in the street and try to renew with reality and think again, it's a good idea once in a while. It's something that will get things moving. So I'm in favor of the student protest, provided it doesn't go too far and doesn't break too much things. This is one thing. On what the students are asking, though, no, I'm against it. Why? Because I believe it is totally unfair that you will have a part of the people pay for get their education paid to become a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, while his neighbor is not going to get anything at all. So what is the legitimacy? What is the sense of having people from the middle class people who are earning $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year now, pay with their income tax for the education, which is actually the commerce. It's the business of somebody who's going to earn $300,000. In other words, when you train a doctor, you're giving him a business to make $200,000 a year. You give it to him free. Would you do that for the guy who has selling gas at the pump? You're not going to build a business and give it to somebody, say, it's yours. Enjoy it. That's what we're doing when we're giving free education. So my solution is this. A country should give free general education. General education being what you give to everybody. Free general education, we should give as much as we can according to our means. So the more education, the better. Cultural, general, everything which is a prerequisite for professional life should be given to everybody. But as soon as you reach the point where we divert, where we split, where one say, I'm going to be a surgeon, and I'm going to be a mechanic, and I'm going to be, as soon as you divert like that, everybody must pay his own part for the simple reason that it's the one who received this education which is going to benefit from it. We can say that the society needs doctors. Of course they need doctors. They need mechanics also. But if the main person who is gaining from education is the one who received the education. And it's the best possible investment, because if I invest in your business or in anything, I can take it away from you.
Yep.
But I cannot take away the education I give you. It's yours. It's completely yours. You got it once for all. So in this case, what we should do, we should try to lend money to the students. In other words, if you don't lend money to the people and let the students each pay for his education, it's terrible, because those who have money will go to the school, and those who don't have money will not be able to attend school. This is not the way to do it. That would be unjust. But if you do say, we are going to prêter, we're going to loan.
A student loan.
We are going to do a student loan to anybody who wants to go to school, as long as he wants to go to school, provided he's going to reimburse by a percentage of his income 20 years hence, when he's between 45 and 55.
But now the Liberal government does have a student loan, and it seems pretty interesting, but students are still protesting.
Yes, for two reasons. First, because it looks interesting, but it's complex and it's not that interesting. It's not that it's not that interesting. And furthermore, it is very discriminatory. In other words, what we need when we say we're going to I have problem with the word loan in English. Is it to loan money?
To loan.
To lend money. It's a loan, lend.
To lend.
To
lend money.
Yeah.
So if you are going to lend money, you should lend money to anybody who wants to study, insofar as he's got success in his studies. As long as he doesn't fail, you should give him all the money he wants, provided he's ready to reimburse that money as a percentage of his income. Years hence, when he's trained his family, when he's not when he's out of the university. When he's out of the university, he must live. He must create a family. He must train his own children. It's not the time to ask him to reimburse. Ask him to reimburse when he's 45. When is the time when he's thinking about putting money in Grand Cayman, about investing in property elsewhere, trying to escape his income tax? This is the moment to get at him and say, well, you've got so much money. Maybe you could reimburse us a little bit. This is the moment in which the loan should be reimbursed.
But if we only ask you money back like 20 years after you graduated,
yes.
But people during these 20 years, older people need money. So where these money come from?
Okay.
How can we make money like during the 20 years?
Well, okay, I can tell you but we're going to get into something a little bit more sophisticated. Right now, money is just something that you print and you give to yourself. Actually, at this time in the world, there is about 600 times more money in circulation than the actual worth it is supposed to represent. In other words, if we would be smart investment, we would look at that and say money isn't worth anything. It's paper. So banks will say we are going to print $700 billion or $1 trillion, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just paper. And it doesn't matter they keep this money. In other words, they give it to bankers among themselves. If you give money to rich people, no problem at all. They just exchange it between themselves and you've got no inflation. Why? Because rich people already have everything they need. They don't consume money. They don't consume things. They already have everything they want. So if you give money to the rich, what do? They invest. They change it. They will buy a $1 million Van Gogh. They will sell as a $10 million Van Gogh 10 years hence. It doesn't matter. It's all paper. It has no reality. This money has no reality. The real reality is the labor. It's the work you do. When you produce something, this is real. It exists. Okay, the work is real. Money is just a figment of someone's imagination. So when you say we cannot pay education because we don't have the money, it's bullshit. Because what you need to give education is, well, you need to have a place where you give education. And this could be changed a lot if we would use the possibilities of the internet and all the modern facilities for training. I used to be a specialist in distance education, so I know what we are doing in the educational system is just novel. It's a disaster. So we could actually have education. We could have it for 1/10 the price of what we're doing right now. But anyway, if we want to make education, you need somebody who wants to learn, you need somebody who wants to teach, and you need a kind of organization to have it work. When we say we're going to lend money to the student, it's not really because we want to pay for his education. He's going to pay for his education, including the salary of a $300,000 a year rector, okay, if he wants to pay for that. But basically, it's more or less to give him a living, because he's supposed to be learning. He's not supposed to be working.
Since we are talking money, since we are talking about money, do you think Quebec needs a better economic plan or another better economic system to make it better?
Well, let's put it that way. Quebec is a very small fish in a very, very large global pond. In other words, we have no control over our economy. I mean, that would be ridiculous. Just to think that we can do something about it is just dreaming. In other words, what we're doing right now in Quebec, we're trying to do the best we can as the 15th player in the game. We are there, we see things that happen. And people still have a tendency to think about the economy like something which is happening, you know. That was true 25, 30, 40 years ago. It's not that anymore. The economy now is what people who run the economy decide it is. So in other words, the people who run the economy, the government, the banks, they decide what we're going to have. And they need a certain amount of movement on the financial markets, and they manage that we get that. We cannot guess what it will be because their whole purpose in life is to outguess us. So, of course, I'm not going to find out what they went before the Rothschild Bank knows. Okay. They know before me. So what we have to do is try to adapt rapidly to the situation the way it evolves. Where, like people, they are in the wood and they are waiting, and if they see something, they shoot at it. But we are in no position to control the circumstances, just to react to circumstances. Quebec cannot do anything except react.
Okay. My last question, it will be, what do you think about the other political parties, what they are doing? Do you think they're doing good or they're doing bad or not good?
When we're calling parties, there are two things. It's a two-tier affair. You've got deputy and people who are in the smaller section of the they are just nice, good people. They don't know what they are doing, what they are talking about. I mean, they are just there because it's a job like another. Then you've got the real rulers. The real rulers are all organized and closely knit. Bankers, rulers, financialists, all this is a closed system. It works. Could we do any better than that? Maybe yes, maybe no, but fractionally. In other words, we couldn't do much better because we're not big enough to change the whole system. We cannot do much worse than that because they wouldn't let us do it. Okay. So if we do anything very, very stupid in Quebec, somebody will intervene. Okay. Independence of Quebec would be something very stupid. Okay? So we don't have to think about those things. It will not happen. You can consider that if we ever think about the independence of Quebec or the economy or something like that, it will be within the framework of a North American Union, which will be another story completely. It's the future. But at this time, no referendum, no independence. We cannot do much better than we do. And I'm absolutely sure right now that the policy that will be followed in Quebec after this election will be exactly the same as we have today. Whether it is Charest or Legault or Mrs. Marois, nothing is going to change. Because those people are just part of a system. They don't have any real authority. They are there to represent the people and keep us happy. But they don't have any authority to change things. Forget about it.
Very nice meeting, very fruitful interview with you.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, we learn a lot, yeah.
Can I expect to remain alive until I reach home?
So at the end, I wish you the best on September 4th.
I wish everyone can
vote.
Can understand what you're talking about.
So would I. But then I would win.
Have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, David. Have a good day.